Hello students, welcome to the course Atoms and Molecules for MSc Physics Semester 2 as per the revised syllabus of Savitribai Phule Pune University CBCS 2019 pattern. In the previous lecture, we have studied the revision of atomic models such as Thomson's atomic model, Rutherford's atomic model and Bohr's atomic model. In this lecture, we will study the Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom and hydrogen spectrum in detail. So, outline of my talk is the Bohr's study of hydrogen atom, hydrogen spectrum. Then we will study the strength of Bohr model and drawbacks of Bohr model. So in 1900, Max Planck proposed a revolutionary theory called as Planck's quantum theory that we all know, and Einstein in 1905 used this theory to explain the photoelectric effect. So Thomson, he proposed the atomic model based on his experiments, and we know that this model was discarded by Rutherford's alpha particle scattering experiment. On the basis of that alpha particle scattering experiment, Rutherford proposed a model known as Rutherford's nuclear model that we have already studied in the previous lecture. So Rutherford model has certain drawbacks, that it was unable to explain certain phenomenon like the emission of spectral lines in detail. In 1913, Niels Bohr, a great Danish physicist, combined the ideas by Planck and Einstein, and he applied these ideas with Rutherford's model of the atom. That means the Rutherford's model was studied by Bohr, and he applied the quantum theory to this model and made some certain changes in this model and proposed the Bohr's atomic model that we have already discussed in the previous lecture. So this satisfactory explanation of the stability of the atom and observed spectrum of hydrogen atom was given by Professor Niels Bohr in 1913 by applying quantum theory of Rutherford model of the atom, and the main highlights of this Bohr's model are that first he accepted the Rutherford's concept of the nuclear atomic model, in which the atom consists of a positively charged nucleus. He postulated that the electrons move around the nucleus in a few widely separated permissible orbits. The orbit of the electron is fixed and it does not radiate energy while moving in its fixed orbit, known as stationary orbit. Thus, in Bohr's model, the electrons can move only in some particular orbits of definite radii and not all radii as suggested by Rutherford. When an electron jumps from higher stationary orbit to a lower stationary orbit, it radiates energy of definite frequency. So he proposed the model in terms of three postulates or three assumptions. So Bohr's first postulate is that the electron rotates round the nucleus in various stationary or non-radiating circular orbits. The necessary centripetal force to keep the electron in the closed circular orbit is provided by the electrostatic attraction between the negatively charged electron and the positively charged nucleus. That means the electron revolve in circular orbits around the nucleus. Thus, if m is the mass of the electron and v is the velocity and r is the radius of the circular orbit, then necessary centripetal force is given by Fc is equal to mv square upon r. And also, on the other hand, if the charge on the nucleus is Ze, while Z is atomic number and E is the charge on the electron, then the electrostatic force of attraction between the nucleus and the electron is given by Fe is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 Z square upon R square, where epsilon 0 is equal to 8.85 into 10 raised to minus 12 Coulomb square plus Newton meter square is called the permittivity of free space. Therefore, according to Bohr's first postulate, we can write mv square upon r is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 Z square upon r square, because the electrostatic force is balanced by the centripetal force, right? And therefore these two forces we can equate and we can write the equation. Now let us study the Bohr's second postulate. So only those orbits are permissible for the electrons in which the total angular momentum of the electron is equal to an integral multiple of h upon 2 pi, where h is Planck's constant. Thus, according to Bohr's second postulate, not all the orbits are permissible for electron. That means electron cannot revolve in any orbit. It will revolve only those orbits for which the angular momentum of the electron is equal to an integral multiple of h upon 2 pi, where h is Planck's constant, and that is we can write mvr is equal to n into h upon 2 pi, where this n is the integer, n is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 dash 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 up to infinity, is called the principal quantum number. So this equation is called as Bohr's quantum condition. That means the angular momentum of the electron is quantized, right? So Bohr's second postulates tells us that the angular momentum of the electron is quantized. That means the angular momentum takes the discrete values, it will not take the continuous values, and therefore only certain values of the angular momentum is allowed. That means for which the angular momentum is h upon 2 pi, so integral multiple of h upon 2 pi, only those orbits are allowed for the electron and rest of the orbits are forbidden, right? So Bohr also proposed the third postulate in order to explain the observed spectra coming from the hydrogen atom. So he proposed that no energy is radiated by the atom so long as the electron continues to move in its stationary orbit. The emission or absorption of energy takes place when an electron jumps from one permitted orbit to another. The amount of energy emitted or absorbed by the atom is equal to the difference between the energies of the two orbits. That means when electron jumps from higher orbit to lower orbit, it will emit a photon, right? So that energy is emitted in terms of photon, and its energy is equal to h nu, which is equal to the difference between two energy levels, right? Thus if E1 and E2 are the energies of the two levels, then the frequency nu of the radiation emitted or absorbed is given by E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu, where h is Planck's constant, right? So this is known as Bohr's or Einstein's frequency condition. So this is called as Bohr's frequency condition, right? So these are the three postulates. On the basis of these three postulates, Bohr proposed this model of hydrogen atom. Now, on the basis of this model, Bohr was able to calculate the radius of Bohr's orbit, right? So radius of Bohr's orbit is equal to Rn is equal to epsilon 0 n square h square upon pi m e raised to 2, right? Where epsilon 0, that we know permittivity, m is mass of the electron and e is the charge of the electron, and n is the number of the orbit, right? And that n we call it principal quantum number. So it varies for different orbits. So velocity of electron in Bohr orbit is given by Vn is equal to e square upon 2 epsilon 0 n h. The total energy of the electron in the orbit is given by En is equal to minus m e raised to 4 upon 8 epsilon 0 square n square h square. Also the frequency of light emitted, so that frequency we express in terms of wave numbers. So wave number, so if En is the energy of the electron in the higher orbit and Ep is the energy of electron in the lower orbit, then we can write the wave number nu bar is equal to 1 over lambda, which is equal to r into 1 upon p square minus 1 upon n square, where this r is equal to m e raised to 4 upon 8 epsilon 0 square h cube into c. So is known as Rydberg's constant and its value is 1.097 into 10 raised to 7 per meter, right? So this is the Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. So on the basis of this Bohr's theory, we can explain the hydrogen spectrum. So the wave number corresponding to the transition of electron from higher, that is nth orbit, to the lower, that is pth orbit, is given by nu bar is equal to 1 over lambda is equal to r times 1 upon p square minus 1 upon n square. So various series of spectral lines in the hydrogen atom occur when the electron jumps from the higher orbit to the lower orbit. Last line or shortest line in each series is called as the series limit, and after the series limit a continuum of spectrum occurs. So the details are given as, so Lyman series. So when electron jumps from an outer orbit to the innermost orbit, that is first orbit, the Lyman series is obtained. Thus the Lyman series obtained when the transition of the electron from any n is equal to 2, 3, 4 or 5 or higher orbit to the p is equal to 1 orbit, then Lyman series will occur, right? So the series limit of Lyman series is given by Rydberg's constant in per centimeter. That value we can express in per centimeter unit. So the spectral line of Lyman series fall in the ultraviolet region. So there are different lines of the Lyman series will occur. So the first line in the Lyman series is called as Lyman alpha line for p is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2 transition. The second line is Lyman beta line for p is equal to 1 and n is equal to 3 transition. The third line is called as Lyman gamma line for p is equal to 1 and n is equal to 4 transition. And the longest line in Lyman series is obtained for p is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2. So that in that case we will get the longest line, and the shortest line in Lyman series is obtained for p is equal to 1 and n is equal to infinity, right? So next series is Balmer series. Balmer series, the spectral lines in the Balmer series are produced when an electron jumps from the higher orbit n is equal to 3, 4, 5 or 6 etc. to the orbit p is equal to 2, right? So the first line in the Balmer series, also called as H alpha line, is emitted when the electron jumps from n is equal to 3 to n is equal to 2 level. The second line is called as H beta line, is emitted when the electron jumps from n is equal to 4 to p is equal to 2 level. The next line is called as H gamma line, is emitted when an electron jumps from n is equal to 5 to p is equal to 2 level. The fourth line is called as H delta line, is emitted when the electron jumps from n is equal to 6 to p is equal to 2 level. The spectral lines of the Balmer series fall in the visible region of the spectrum, and the series limit of Balmer series is given by r by 4 in per centimeter. And since the Balmer series falls in the visible region, because of this reason the Balmer series of hydrogen atom is discovered first, right? Then next series is Paschen series. So this series is obtained when an electron jumps from the outer orbit, that is n is equal to 4, 5, 6 etc. to the third orbit p is equal to 3. These spectral lines fall in the near infrared region of the spectrum. Next series is Brackett series. So this series is obtained when an electron jumps from outer orbit, that is n is equal to 5, 6 or 7 etc. to the fourth orbit p is equal to 4. These spectral lines fall in the infrared region of the spectrum. So next series is Pfund series. So this series is obtained when an electron jumps from outer orbit, that is n is equal to 6, 7, 8 etc. to the fifth orbit, that is p is equal to 5. The spectral line fall in the far infrared region of the spectrum. So next higher levels such as Humphreys, that is for p is equal to 6, Hansen, that is p is equal to 7 and so on, can be obtained in the case of hydrogen atom. However, these spectral lines are very faint, and because of this reason there is rare possibility of such transitions which can be detected. So we can tabulate the various lines or various series in the hydrogen spectrum. So we can see the Lyman series occur for transitions to n p is equal to 1 level, and from transitions from n is equal to 2, 3, 4, 5 dash 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 up to infinity, right? So that falls into ultraviolet region. So Balmer series, that its final stage is p is equal to 2, falls in the visible region. Paschen series falls in the near infrared region. Brackett series falls in the infrared region, and Pfund series which falls in the far infrared region of the spectrum. So we can plot the spectral lines in the hydrogen atom, right? So we can see the energy levels. So this is n is equal to 1, n is equal to 2, n is equal to 3, n is equal to 4, 5 up to infinity, right? So we know the ground state energy or ionization potential from the ground state of hydrogen atom. So it is, the ground state energy is minus 13.6 electron volt. That means ionization potential is plus 13.6 electron volt. Thus, the Lyman series occurs when transitions occur at n is equal to level from higher energy levels, right? So this is the Lyman series, and its series limit is shown by dotted line, right? Then for n is equal to 2, the series is called as Balmer series, right? So all the transitions coming to this n is equal to 2, so n I am calling this quantum number n, so it is called as Balmer series. Then the transitions coming to n is equal to 3 is called as Paschen series. Then we have bracket series for n is equal to 4 and Pfeffern series for n is equal to 5, right? So we can see various series in the hydrogen spectrum, right? And for each series, the shortest line and we can see the series limit are shown, right? So this is one of the energy level diagram for hydrogen atom, right? So this Bohr's model has certain strengths that we are going to study. So Bohr was the first to apply the Planck's quantum theory to the hydrogen atom. The wavelengths obtained from the Bohr's theory exactly agrees with that are experimentally observed, right? So whatever the experimental observations, so Bohr's theory exactly agrees with the experimental values of the spectral lines, right? Then the radius of the hydrogen atom calculated using Bohr's model agrees with the empirically known values of radius of the hydrogen atom, right? So radius of hydrogen atom that is calculated from experiments agrees with the value that is predicted by Bohr's model for hydrogen atom. An ionization potential of hydrogen atom as given by Bohr's model agrees with that of experimentally known values of the ionization potential. Bohr's model gives the strong theoretical basis for the observed spectral lines of the hydrogen atom. Bohr's model provided greater understanding for the working of periodic table designed by Mendeleev and Moseley. So the value of Rydberg constant that is given by Bohr's model agrees with the empirical value obtained from the series limit of spectral lines for hydrogen atom. So these are some of the strengths of Bohr model. However, Bohr model was unable to explain certain phenomenon. So therefore, there are certain drawbacks of Bohr's model. First drawback is that Bohr's model is only applicable to one electron atoms like hydrogen or ionized helium, etc., and is not easily extended to describe more complicated or many electron atoms. That means Bohr's model is applicable to only hydrogen and hydrogen-like atoms, and it is not easily extended to describe more complicated or many electron atoms, right? Bohr's theory could not explain the fine structure of spectral lines. So while certain spectral lines can show 2 or 3 spectral lines when we use with very high resolution spectrometers, so in that case Bohr's model could not explain the fine structure. So this is called as fine structure, right? So with the high resolution spectrometers we can resolve the spectral lines, and we can see that each spectral line that is predicted in the hydrogen spectrum, that the spectral line is actually consist of a doublet or a triplet. So there may be 2 lines or 3 lines in a spectral line, and therefore this is called the fine structure, and which is could not be explained on the basis of the Bohr model. Bohr's theory introduces only one quantum number n, whereas experimental evidence concerning fine structure of spectral lines suggest additional quantum numbers. So only one quantum number was predicted in the Bohr's theory. Bohr's theory could not explain the observed splitting of spectral lines in the presence of magnetic field, that means the Zeeman effect, and electric field, that is Stark effect. So these two effects are not explained on the Boas theory. Boas theory could not explain the relative intensity of spectral lines. So why certain spectral lines are more intense than the others, which is not explained by Boas theory, right? It could not explain the distribution of electrons in different orbits in an atom. So Boas theory tells us that the electrons revolve in different permitted orbits, but it could not explain the distribution of electrons in different orbits, right? So this is some of the drawbacks. So it cannot be used for the quantitative explanation of chemical bonding. So if you want to explain the chemical bonding that is occurring in different atoms, so atoms or molecules, so Boas model cannot be used to give the quantitative explanation of chemical bonding in this case, right? So these are certain drawbacks of Bohr model, right? So in summary, we have learned that Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. We have also studied the hydrogen atom spectrum. We have considered the strengths and drawbacks of Bohr model in detail, right? So in the next lecture, we are going to study the revision of quantum numbers. We are going to study the Pauli exclusion principle and Hund's rule and electronic configuration of the atom. Thank you.